How's it going, everybody? So in this video, I'm going to be talking you through my 10 favorite fighters of all time, why they're my favorite fighters of all time, some of the performances that have made me enjoy watching them so much, and just get into all the details. So going into my top 10, starting off firstly at number 10, we are going with Argentina's Nicolino Locche. This guy was a joke defensively, one of the greatest defensive fighters of all time. Nicknamed the Untouchable, Nicolino Locche would tease his opponents. He would have his hands down by his waist and just offer his head as a target. And he would constantly bob and weave and just absolutely school his opponents. He's probably in the top 3 greatest defensive fighters of all time, but that's not necessarily why I like him so much. It is his whole persona. The guy was a chain smoker and would even smoke in between the rounds in the corner. He never even liked training. He was just a pure natural talent. A guy that didn't look like a professional boxer at all. Relatively short, stocky, balding, but an absolute genius in the ring. His performance against Takeshi Fuji, who was a Japanese champion at light welterweight, is one of the greatest masterclasses in boxing history. Going into number 9, we are going to go with one of the greatest southpaws of all time, in my opinion, along with Carlos Monzon, the greatest middleweight of all time, marvelous Marvin Hagler. Hagler was a menace. Most people's favorite fighter of all time, especially of a certain age. Hagler was just the epitome of discipline, grit, hard work, and a will to win. Hagler was phenomenal. I mean, you know, he had this mindset where he would just challenge everyone. He would allow everyone to take his title. I also like the fact that he had to come up the hard way. He wasn't gifted the title. He had roughly around 50 odd fights before he even boxed for the title. And then he was robbed against Vito Antuofermo, but he just would refuse to give up. And he got his title eventually, and he reigned for roughly around 7 years, defeating the likes of Hagler, defeating the likes of Tommy Hearns, defeating Roberto Duran, John Mugabe, Alan Minter, Vito Antuofermo. A legendary resume. Always exciting, always brought the fight, and you just have to watch that fight against John Mugabe. I mean, John Mugabe was knocking everyone out. He was a killer, and he hit Hagler with shots that would have knocked most good champions out, but Hagler just refused to back up. He walked him down and wore him out mentally. At number 8, I'm going to go with another heavyweight, the legendary undefeated heavyweight champion of the world, Rocky Marciano. What can I say about Marciano? I mean, usually when you're looking at undefeated guys, you're looking at your Slicksters, your Floyd Mayweathers, your Joe Calzaghes, your Andre Wards, guys that don't get hit a lot. To go 49-0 with a style and the disadvantages that Rocky Marciano had physically is unbelievable. Don't get me wrong, Marciano was protected on his way to the title. He wasn't fighting necessarily great fighters on his way up. He was fighting a lot of walkovers. But when he got to the title, he beat the likes of Archie Moore, Jersey Joe Walcott, Cesar Charles. You know, you got two all-time great fighters there in Charles and Moore, and one of the great heavyweights of the time in Jersey Joe Walcott. Marciano was just the epitome of everything we all have. Just hard work, discipline, a will to win. Against all the odds, all the natural disadvantages, he would just refuse to lose. He had this swarming style where he would just overwhelm his opponents. A murderous puncher. I always remember Teddy Atlas saying how he would break down his opponent's arms. He would just beat the arms and pop the blood vessels in the arms of the opponents and just wear them out. And I don't think there's ever been a heavyweight champion in history with the endurance that Rocky Marciano had. And he was a lot smaller as well. He's a small heavyweight. You look at the fight against Joe Louis. Joe Louis wasn't a towering figure, but, you know, Marciano looks like he's a weight division below. I just loved Marciano, one of the greatest fighters of all time. Going into number 7, we're going to go with the legendary Mexican, 89-0, Julio Cesar Chavez. Chavez's style is beautiful to watch. I mean, the guy is so relaxed. His ability to make shots miss up close and just stalk his opponents, almost like he's gliding across the ring. I love the left hooks. I love the way he's able to cut off the ring and break the opponent down. The body work, the punches just look so effortless, but so powerful and so clean. And you can just see people falter when he touches them. the most title fights in history too, just the level of consistency, going through 3 weight divisions. I believe he had 37 world title fights, which, you know, in this day and age, most boxers don't even have 37 fights. Chavez was unbelievable. I absolutely love him. In my opinion, the greatest fighter of all time. Always brought the action too, you know, no matter what you think about the Meldrick Taylor fight, for instance, he provided that drama. He refused to give up against the Slickster, and it was due to his discipline, his non-stop will to win that he got that knockdown in the last 10 seconds. Going on to number 6, we're going to go to another legend of the 1980s. I mean, the 80s was just a phenomenal era for boxing, and we're going to go with Sugar Ray Leonard. In my opinion, one of the greatest fighters alive today. Leonard was just phenomenal. He could do it all. He could box on the back foot, but he had amazing power and an ability to throw combination punches on the front foot. There's just something about Sugar Ray Leonard's punching technique and the speed and the snap. It's probably my favourite technique in the history of boxing. The way he punches just looks so spiteful. It has everything. The timing's perfect, the power. I mean, just watch the knockout of Davey Boy Green. It's just beautiful to watch. And Leonard beat everyone of his time, and he beat the greatest fighters of all time, you know, Duran, Hearns, Hagler. He was just phenomenal. Had everything. Heart as well. You're looking at the schooling when he schooled Duran in the rematch, but not necessarily that is his defining moment. More taking the loss to Duran, but going 15 rounds with a prime Roberto Duran. Sugar Ray Leonard is just a phenomenal fighter. And next up, at number 5, we're going to go with Britain's Carl the Cobra Froch. Man, Froch was so exciting to watch. He was just not necessarily the cleanest puncher of all time, the cleanest boxer, but an underrated technician. He had an excellent jab, which he used to school Arthur Abraham. But his toughness, his grit, the way he would just take shots on the chin and just shake him off and throw his entire body back. He was just such a handful to deal with. He had some legendary fights. The fight against Jermaine Taylor is one of the most exciting fights you'll ever see. The fights against Mikhail Kessler are wars. The fight against George Groves, the amount of punishment Froch was able to endure against George Groves is a joke. Carl Froch is one of the great British all-time fighters and one of the most exciting fighters I've ever seen. So incredibly tough, a heart of a champion, just unreal will to win and legendary toughness. And going on to number 4, we are going to go with another tough fighter, Micky Ward. Oh, I mean, Micky Ward was just the epitome of grit. Micky Ward took a few years out of his career, came back, and then didn't make any money, any significant money really, until he was in his last 50-odd fights against Arturo Gatti, and what is the most legendary trilogy in boxing, in my opinion. Just so much fun to watch. It's definitely up there with Ali and Frazier, Bowe and Holyfield, and you got to consider this is a light welterweight non-title fight trilogy. Micky Ward was just, I love his left hook to the body. I based a lot of my style on Micky Ward's left hook to the body. His toughness, again, his will to win, but he just had so many brutal fights and would refuse to lose. Of course, there's the trilogy against Arturo Gatti, which is just phenomenal. But he also had tough fights against Shea Neary, Alfonso Sanchez, where he was losing every round and came back with a sickening body shot. And there's the fight against Emmanuel Augustus that doesn't get talked about enough. It's one of the all-time great fights. And Ward was just phenomenal to watch, so exciting. So at number 4, Micky Ward. At number 3, now we're getting into it. Vasyl Lomachenko. Oh my God, this guy has redefined modern boxing. For a while, Lomachenko was just making world-level opponents quit time after time. Loma is on a different level. I mean, coming from someone that's boxed myself and seen up close how hard it is to do certain things, watching this guy is just like, it's like a revelation. The way he's able to be so offensively minded in his peak, but so defensively sound as well. The angles, the ability to open his opponents up, the combinations, the speed, the mindset. Loma is just phenomenal to watch. A true artist in the ring and still underrated in my opinion. You don't fight for a world title in your second fight and break the world record to becoming the fastest champion, the fastest 2-weight champion, and the fastest 3-weight champion without being a special talent. He's also fought around 10 world champions in 19 fights. He has taken the losses. However, you look back at that amateur career and what he's done as a professional, he is already an all-time great. 396 wins as an amateur to 1 defeat, 2 world medals, 2 Europeans, 2 Olympic gold medals. Loma is phenomenal, a real all-time great talent. And going on to number 2, we are going to go with the legendary Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran. Another one that's underrated in my opinion, not by the boxing experts, but people just remember Duran for his fight against Sugar Ray Leonard where he said no mass. Duran is so much more than just that fighter. He proved his toughness so many times. The greatest inside fighter in history, probably along with Chavez and Henry Armstrong. Duran was just a killer. Now, what people don't give Duran credit for is his reign as a lightweight champion. Duran is the greatest lightweight champion in history, dominating the lightweight scene for over 6.5 years, racking his record up to an incredible 71 wins to 1 defeat, destroying the likes of Ken Buchanan. He had the trilogy with, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, excellent trilogy with the Puerto Rican Esteban de Jesus, and just dominated a very competitive lightweight scene, was a killer. Arguably the greatest fighter of the 70s over Ali on his reign as lightweight, just a phenomenal fighter. And then he took on the best of the 80s, 3 of the greatest fighters of all time. The only man to defeat a prime Sugar Ray Leonard. The only man other than Leonard to go 15 rounds of a prime Marvin Hagler. And then after he got destroyed by Tommy Hearns, he comes back and beats Davey Moore for a title. Beat the likes of Pepino Cuevas, Carlos Palomino. These are great fighters. And then moves up to middleweight at 38 years old and beats Iron Barkley, who's knocking out formidable middleweights after coming from lightweight. Iron Barkley had just knocked out Tommy Hearns, and Duran, much smaller than Barkley, produced one of the greatest performances of all time at 38. And then he boxed for like another decade, taking on the likes of Hector Camacho, Vinny Paz. Duran is phenomenal, so tough, just a legend. At number 3, Roberto Duran. Number 2, sorry, Roberto Duran. And at number 1, my favourite fighter of all time, Gennady Golovkin, Triple G. Oh man, I mean, Triple G's career was a pretty wild experience for me, because I remember watching Triple G the first time when he boxed Laquan Simon, who was a low-level fighter, and it was in a really small arena in Germany, I think. And I just remember this left hook he pulled out in the first round, and ever since that fight, no one knew Triple G then. He was the biggest secret in boxing, the most avoided fighter. I watched every fight unfold until he was a pound for pound and pay-per-view star. I base so much of my game on Triple G. I love the humble nature outside of the ring, but the clinical, front-footed style in which he would hunt his opponents down. Chavez-esque, but also had that European twist to it. Just a formidable puncher. 21 or 22 middleweight title defenses, 24 knockouts in a row as middleweight champion. So exciting, just such a clinical beast. There's a reason he's probably one of the most avoided fighters in history. People didn't want to know Triple G in his prime. You look at how he dismantled his opponents. I mean, the way he was able to open his opponents up, use his jab. A very technically underrated boxer defensively, one of the great jabs of all time. You just look at how he picked off David Lemieux, picked into pieces with the jab. So at number 1, Triple G. I was actually lucky enough to see Triple G live against Kell Brook when he came over to the UK at the O2 Arena, and that was a phenomenal experience. So they're my 10 favourite fighters of all time. Yeah, feel free to drop your favourite fighter in the comment sections. I'd love to hear it. And if you do like this content, please subscribe, like, comment and share. Thank you very much.